This moment requires us to also debunk some of this stuff they're trying to sell the American people, to scapegoat instead of owning up to the responsibility that the powerful have to have some level of concern and care, if not just basic fucking curiosity. Because there's so much about this moment that is trying to make people feel like they've lost their mind. When in fact, these motherfuckers are crazy.
These motherfuckers.
That's capitalism.
Yeah, she doesn't want to do shit about that.
Oh, okay.
All right, hey everybody. Welcome back to another Wet Wired. I'm Sean, and I'm here with Jules, as always. Up at the top, I want to acknowledge that, at least for the moment, the ceasefire in Gaza is holding. Well, we're not doing an episode about the ceasefire or Trump strong arming this whole thing, or the Gaza Riviera or anything like that. But it is I mean, for those of us who've been following it closely, and we can at least for right now take a couple of breaths, knowing that the people in Gaza aren't being mass murdered for the first time in 2 years. There was already an incident where I guess somebody got close to what they call the yellow line, which is a boundary area, and were shot at. But I'm not sure if anybody was actually shot by Israelis. So there have been shots fired in the ceasefire already, but it's not. It's a very different scenario than armed drones and bombs falling on people. I do want to stress that this is I'll go for it, Jules.
I was basically about to say what I think you were about to say, which is that this is not to say that it's over the finish line here. Where there's still apartheid, there's still active genocide going on. It's just that genocide isn't multi-thousand-pound bombs that say "Made in the USA" on the side. At the
I mean,
moment,
the bombs are still there. They're just not being dropped. And and I think
yeah,
that's actually one of the main issues and why we can't afford to put this out of our minds is the fundamental reasons that allowed Israel to do this in the first place are still in place, which is the billions of dollars in U.S. funding for this like homicidal country. And like if you want to mince words and not and be accurate about categories, yeah, you can't blame like every single person in Israel for this, even though this military campaign that the Israelis have been waging this for the last 2 years is exceedingly popular there. So you can't blame everybody. There is definitely some uh, voices of dissent in Israel, but there have been polls that have put it as high as 80% approval. So it is a lot of the people are have been behind all of this genocidal effort. But a lot of signs are pointing to the possibility that the Gazans' political future and the U.S.'s ongoing support of Israel's genocidal project are going to be intimately tied to politics in the U.S., at least for the near future. I mean, this is going to function as a sort of a litmus test for a lot of voters. And basically, how do you feel about the U.S. support of Israel? And we've seen the success so far of at least one politician who has been very outspoken in the need for as he describes it, for the U.S. to divest from this Israeli project. And we've seen how successful that's been for Mamdani in New York, and we're just gonna have to see if that's gonna be repeated in other places with other candidates. And when we have people that are either going to stop supporting Israel in the way that they have previously, or we're going to see candidates who are going to come up that have no history of supporting Israel in any way.
I
I
think we're also
mean,
going to see it as an indicator that will suggest 10, 20 other policies that will be immediately clear just on whether or not they're willing to have the spine to say, hey, genocide's not great. We could go ahead and stop sending billions of dollars to this country that and in specifically in weapons. And the person who says that is also going to almost categorically be in favor of such basic things that are outrageously popular as universal health care, raising the minimum wage, the easy, low effort policies.
yeah, easy low effort policies. And I think as more people awaken to the reality that we cannot in any way expect lasting political changes like those, or to even for a sense of justice to take hold here in the US, so long as we continue to export violence to other countries.
That
Like,
just gets the empire boomerang back around to us, anyways.
and yeah, and I mean, of course, there's definitely going to always be that, because you can't export violence and expect not to have things go, things, and to expect things to go well here. It's a fundamental contradiction that as long as it remains unresolved, we're always going to see this kind of drifting back and forth, this kind of swinging pendulum that we've been experiencing, that always tends to swing. Every time it swings right, it doesn't quite swing as far back left. And, every single time it just keeps swinging a little bit more to the right. And issues like APAC lobbying and which members of Congress are taking money are going to really are going to start figuring much more into how we individually lean on election day. I think, at least that is my hope. My hope is that these issues don't just go away. I think it's important for people to keep them up front. And so far, I don't see any overt sign of this, but I do see a possible indicator coming from conservative media sources, like places like Fox News and OANN and Breitbart, where there have been a lot of articles about how, trying to call out hypocrisy about the, like, people in Hollywood or the pro-Palestine protesters, based on the fact that they are not overjoyed and thrilled by this ceasefire, and that, to them, they're presenting that as evidence that means that they never really cared about it in the first place. But what that says to me is that they're not overjoyed about the ceasefire in the same reason for the same reason I'm not overjoyed about the ceasefire, which is that I don't fully believe it. Mainly because the Palestinians do not have an equal seat at this table. The thumb is if we go, going forward with the ceasefire, we're in a much worse place than things were in the beginning of October 2 years ago,
while
before
I
October
am
7th.
while I'm in favor of a no state solution, and I've said that 1,000 times, and I of course reject the two-state solution. And the reason I reject the two-state solution is that having an ethno state is fucking dumb. Could we fucking rid ourselves of this anachronism, this ridiculous appeal to the turn of the 20th century, the where we oppose empires and see the dissolution of massive swaths of land into all kinds of pockets of nationalism, only to see really just these concentrations of power in this absurd and pseudoscientific category. Well, this demographic over here really needs to be in charge. It's like the fucking Hutus and the Tutsis, for example. The arbitrary designation of ownership of a land and the administration of that land based on some kind of phenotype is absurd. We're gonna put the people who have brown eyes in charge because those fucking blue eyes can't be trusted.
Yeah, it is an antiquated idea, like overall, that where there would be any kind of an ethno state, any kind of a state that's based on people's religious preferences or their hair color or their last, like the, whether or not they have a vowel at the end of their last name. Like this, it doesn't, all of this is, like these ridiculous categories that we're imposing on this landscape and these people that live in them, live in it.
So
All right.
I just briefly, I forgot what I was going to say there, was simply that while I'd like to see a no state solution of stateless direct democracy, I know that that's not in the cards. Uh, Second to that, I guess a one state solution where there's actual fucking democracy. I mean, you could just even just go before the fucking 1948, and we'd be at least a little bit fucking better off, if nothing else, to just have a government that represents all the people
I
equally and
mean,
not have apartheid. But even then, the question of the two state solution, the point that I wanted to get at there before I got fucking sidetracked, is what other state, as all these countries are recognizing the state of Palestine, yeah, with its navy and its air force, calling it a war is patently absurd. It's an indigenous population that may as well have some fucking slings and arrows against this arsenal of the Israeli state. It's not a fucking war. And in the same way that you don't have a two-state solution possible, what state?
and no, and that goes back to what I'm saying about my skepticism with this ceasefire, and why a lot of other people that have been in support of ending the genocide and in support of extending more rights to Palestinians is that any of these two-state solutions are, none of them can get off the ground if they don't include the ability for Palestinians to create their own fucking passports.
Yeah.
If you can't make a passport, then you're not a country.
Yeah.
You're not even, it's not even, you're not even a satrapy. You're nothing. You don't exist if you can't make a passport.
And pretty soon you'll be able to get on our TikTok shop the Julian passport for Julianopolis. It's just $23.99.
TikTok shop.
Oh, it's all the
Fuck,
rage.
fuck that Larry Ellison shit.
Yeah,
All right.
it's all right. Let's get into this.
Rant is over. All right, on to the rest of the show. I guess this is the part of our apology tour. We made a pledge early in the summer to cut back on news episodes and to spend more time on, deep dives into the weird shit that made the backbone of this show. However, we did not promise to do no news episodes, and I stand by that.
We never said those precise that exact combination of words.
We never said no news. We just said not as many. So we haven't
we
done
were
one in
we
a
were like
while.
politicians. We never said yes or no. We just deflected by criticizing the person's hair color.
What was that thing that
Pam Bondi?
that no, the Secretary of State once said? He said that don't
Rubio?
answer the question that they asked, answer the question that you wish they'd asked. I think Rumsfeld said that.
Oh yeah, that's totally Rumsfeld. Yeah, him or Colin Powell.
All right, no, it wasn't Powell. He wasn't that much of an operator. So first up, we have some Jordan Peterson
Speaking of
news.
a fucking operator,
this is a guy that we have not talked about in quite some time, and he's been largely kind of sidelined for a while. Now we know why. His daughter came out, and if you don't know who Mikhaila Peterson is, she is clearly the daughter of Jordan Peterson, and also just a wild person. I like she makes RFK Jr. look rather tepid in her beliefs about healthcare and the causes of illnesses. So she came, Jules, you saw this tweet, right?
yeah, absolutely.
She wrote on Twitter, "Hey, as Jordan B. Peterson has been really sick. A lot of people have been asking for updates, So here's one. He's recovering slowly day by day, but I won't lie, it's slow and scary. He won't be back for another few months at least, probably longer. We're not entirely sure what's going on, but it looks like possible severe SIRS and a lot of bad luck. Or we're getting spiritually attacked. Or
Could
both.
be either of these things. I had to look this up. So SIRS, which is an acronym, CIRS,
Chronic
is,
inflammatory respiratory syndrome. Yeah.
and I want to say that every fucking time I hear the word inflammation in 2025, I sometimes it's legitimate, sure, but every time I hear the word inflammation come out of anybody's mouth, I have these fucking big red alarms, these twirling lights in my head going off. Danger, danger, danger. Bullshit. For whatever the fuck they're gonna say. And that's because every fucking quack and granola hippie talks about inflammation for everything.
This is a real syndrome. It actually does exist, and it is used. It is there to describe a a kind of like a vague collection of symptoms. But when you look at those symptoms and you see all the different things that people are describing that go into that can lead to a diagnosis of SIRS, it's fucking COVID.
It also,
Like he
it
clearly
also,
just, I mean, he might have long COVID, but it's clearly the effects of having COVID and
it
not being
also,
vaccinated. Like
it
it
also
is
can
like
be,
the way that they bend over backwards to avoid any possibility that they could have any lingering effects of fucking COVID, and then to come up with any cluster of symptoms and call it something else, it can't possibly be the thing that I've been saying for 5 years doesn't exist. Like
it's remarkable how you can take policy differences, transform it into, because it becomes ideological, everything becomes ideological, everything becomes a fucking football in this charade. And you take something that might be a policy difference about how to approach whatever and transform it into denial of that thing. This, we saw it with climate change. So there are policy differences about the sense and significance of prioritizing R&D for solar panels or whatever the fuck, or giving some kind of tax credits to companies to do that. And that transformed into what poisoned lake? I don't know. I don't see a poisoned lake. This is all just liberal. Trees are a liberal myth. Okay, they're just ginned up
it's
by the
like those videos
liberals.
of people who like would turn on their water and like they could light it on fire in their kitchen because of the fucking fracking, and then
Yeah,
the absolute denial that any of that was going on. Like even
yeah,
though there's a video, his water is on fire.
yeah. And the same thing here, where skepticism about the approach to lockdowns and different kinds of mandates and all that stuff transformed into, well, also, is it really a vaccine or is it 5G? I, I pay $50 a month for 5G. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you're clearly on the fast track to get SIRS. So Michaela Peterson goes on. To be perfectly honest, I think a lot of this is spiritual. My newborn Audrey almost died of heart failure for no reason in June. All right, nobody almost died. No infant almost dies from heart failure for no reason. You might not know the reason, but it's not no reason. My dad got sick and came home to stay with us in July, then needed a hospital. And the same day he went to the hospital by ambulance, my newborn turned blue again at home for a different reason, not heart related, and went to a different hospital by ambulance within 3 hours of each other. It's been one thing after another in an otherworldly type of way. In the meantime, we'll be going full force with at Peterson Academy. I just love I love the segue into the plug. Like demons are at our doorstep trying to destroy us. But you know what? The academy doors will stay open.
Daddy Peterson is gasping
and
his last breath.
she even
Meanwhile,
uses
make sure to exit through the gift shop.
she even uses my favorite word in the next line here, and keeping his message across his brand alive while he recovers.
Yeah.
Not letting demons get in the way of that. That's from her. That's not me. Yeah, don't think that she didn't write that just because of how I read it. Prayers are much appreciated. And the prayers in the comments are wild. Oh, it's so good. I mean, it's like every right wing, like crackpot Catholic bishop is in there. I mean, it is a great collection of people in the comment section.
Which, of course, she puts Ephesians 6:12. If you're
Yeah, I didn't even
curious,
bother to look it up. I didn't even bother. Jules, tell us what it is.
I did look it up. It goes, "For our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places."
All right. Ephesians 6:12, everybody. Well, here representing the forces of darkness, we also have some Kamala Harris news. At the end of September, Jules, do you want to try to do a segue here too?
Uh, all right, so you always put me on the goddamn spot here.
I just did that one. Top it.
While we're talking about spirits in your blood and doing cocaine about it, we've got the I'm Speaking Still book tour coming from Kamala Harris. Why is she still around?
Man, that was rough, Jules. I don't.
I
I don't. It is. You're doing that post concussion test where you're trying to touch your fingers together and they keep missing.
There's 6 fingers. Oh, this is worse than we thought. We're gonna have to put him down.
So about I don't know, maybe about a week or so ago, I didn't say this off the top. This is October 14th. So about a week or so ago, maybe a week and a half, there were a ton of clips started coming out of from Harris's book tour. Like if you don't know, she wrote a memoir of the shortest presidential campaign ever, called 107 Days, and she's been out, trying to hawk this book and doing these events. She had one in Atlanta, she had one in DC, one in New York, just had one in Chicago recently. And, so reassuringly, pro Palestine protesters have been showing up at just about every one of her tour stops. I think all of them. And, and chanting things like "your legacy is genocide," and basically calling her to account for her political positions that she had during this campaign. And if you remember how that went at places like the Democrat National Convention, where they decided not to platform the Palestine speaker, or how it went at some of her speaking engagements when people tried to talk about the ongoing genocide, which was fairly young at the time in Palestine. Harris does not respond well to people trying to hold her accountable for her political positions.
And her supporters would consistently say, "This is not the time," as they always say, because it's the most important election of our lifetimes, democracy's at stake. Meanwhile, after the election, when there's no election coming up, that's also not the time.
And if she was, if she had intended, once she was in office, to discontinue support for Israel and put an end to this genocide, then why not campaign on that? Why not tell people that that's what you intend to do? Because there's a lot of people that would like to hear that. And every one of her supporters would roll over for the most part and say, and just as a lot of people have said so far, in a year or so, maybe even faster, everybody will have always been against the genocide.
Yeah.
All these people that have never spoken up about it at all, or even given cover to Israel, or used mincing words like AOC has about Israel's right to defend itself, all of those people will have always been against it. And those people are going to have the records thrown back in their faces, and they're going to react probably as well as Harris does. The only way you can get out of this is to talk about the evolution of your position. And if you're not convincing when you do it, then you're just gonna get called a flip-flopper. Like it's that straightforward of a dynamic. There's no way out other than to say that you've changed your mind.
The only reason that she is not a moment in time like Howard Dean in our collective vague half remembered fever dream of the primaries is because she got a fucking consolation prize. As I will point out every goddamn time, she had single digit polling before she dropped out, even before Iowa. And the whole fucking idea of us even knowing who she is because she was so unfucking likable and unelectable with zero policies. I mean, it's not even that she had policies that were especially bad. She had no policies. She was just
No, none.
vagaries and insinuations.
The one thing that was like that I remember reading that was like hard and fast as an economic policy to address uh, things like low wages and economic conditions uh, in certain in certain neighborhoods, was that she wanted to specifically give tax credits to African American men that wanted to open marijuana dispensaries.
Yeah.
That's that is, I think, the single most ridiculous economic position that you can take on anything.
And
That's like,
incredibly that's incredibly specific
it
too.
was incredibly specific. I mean, that one disappeared immediately because it landed like a brick, and nobody bit. Nobody was like, "Oh, that's a fantastic idea. That'll revitalize these neighborhoods." Like, and this coming, I mean, I don't even need to do the same thing that I was just criticizing, or bringing up as a hypothetical, where talking about how her positions on marijuana have changed over the years. I don't care. Yeah, she was in favor of legalization. She was against legalization when she was as a prosecutor, and then she changed her mind about it. I don't care. That happens. People's minds have changed about things. Like Obama, as shitty as he was, he was actually anti-gay marriage. I mean, it was worse. As bad as he was in his legacy, he used to be worse.
Yeah, I'm look at Hillary, just a handful of years before the primaries where they fucking kneecapped Bernie Sanders, the DNC that is, where they kneecapped Bernie Sanders. She was against gay marriage, like very very strongly against gay marriage. She was in favor of all of the different homophobic policies of her husband during the period. It wasn't she was just in the passenger seat 100%. She she believed in that. Uh for example, DOMA. That was Clinton, guys. That was Bill Clinton who said who enshrined it in law. I want to say in
Yeah.
96.
So yeah, for people who haven't been following the accounts from attendees at these events on social media, it might be hard to imagine exactly how deranged these events have been. This is from Politico after Harris's first stop on her book tour. Many Americans are still mired in a state of low-level depression after Kamala Harris's devastating defeat in the 2024 election. President Donald Trump has steamrolled Washington, and the party's favorability has plunged to historic lows, including among Democrats. As the circular firing squad continues over exactly why the party lost, Harris herself has come in for her share of blame, and in recent weeks she has tumbled in the 2028 presidential polls. She now stands well behind her longtime frenemy, California Governor Gavin Newsom. Like that the time that she was calling, she wanted Newsom's endorsement for her presidential campaign. And he basically responded, "Can't talk hiking," in a text message.
New phone, who dis?
But you wouldn't know it from the crowd assembled Wednesday at the cavernous Town Hall Auditorium in New York City for an 8 p.m. conversation with Kamala Harris, a book talk for the former vice president's recently released and surprisingly sharp-edged memoir of the campaign trail, 107 Days. Here the audience buzzed with excitement at the prospect of seeing Harris up close, and the mood was festive. The event's featured cocktail was the Madam VP, a tall drink of gin, cassis, cardamom, honey, and lemon. It was priced at $24, a likely reference to the campaign year. The audience members seated around me traded campaign stories, reminiscing. One had spent much of the summer door knocking. Another had been a delegate at the Democratic National Convention. The only indication that all was not well was the intermittent thump of pro-Palestinian demonstrators' drums just beyond the venue's doors, which persisted throughout the event. I mean, they make it seem like it's a fucking it's the underground caverns in Lord of the Rings. like the demonstrators are the goblins.
I was imagining a fucking Parisian speakeasy.
Soon, the mere sight of the failed presidential candidate and her husband, Doug Emhoff, prompted a standing ovation. Beside me, a woman shouted, "That's my first gentleman." Another just behind us chimed in, "We love you, Dougie." The pair retreated backstage.
Did somebody really say? I mean, I can believe somebody said that, but what kind of insane place do you have to be in to say
there? You have
that?
to be at her speaking event.
Oh, that's
this is the K-Hive. When I first bought my tickets for the event, I wasn't sure what to expect. Would this be a somewhat skeptical audience, loyal to the Democratic Party, but uneasy about Harris's role in it? Would it be a somber occasion, a chance for reflection about a party or a candidate that failed to reach voters when it mattered most? Not quite. It became clear instantly that this wouldn't be a tough crowd for Harris, nor a place for nagging negativity. This was a K-Hive reunion, and joy was on the agenda. Several minutes later, Aaron Haynes, the event's moderator and founder of the nonprofit news outlet The 19th, took the stage and further set the tone. "We know that tonight's conversation is not just about politics or power," Haynes told the crowd while introducing Harris. "It's about legacy, it's about leadership, and it's about the lived experience of breaking barriers in full view of the world. It's about how history gets written and who gets to write it." Whose legacy here exactly? Harris's? What legacy is that? She was a junior senator for like 4 years. Before that, she was a prosecutor.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the legacy?
Being a VP is a nothing job.
That's not a legacy. That is, you know, that's an also ran. This prompted a wave of mm-hms through the 1,000-person venue. Harris emerged on stage several minutes later, prompting another standing ovation. Harris took great pains to emphasize that the final outcome of the titular 107 days, the loss of every swing state and the popular vote, had been the result of her simple lack of time. It was an unprecedented election, Harris averred. Just think about this for a moment. The sitting president of the United States, 3.5 months before the election, decides not to run for re-election. The sitting vice president takes up the mantle against the former president of the United States, who had been running for 10 years with 107 days to go. And you know what? If you'd been halfway decent as an option, you would have done better, because what I read that differently. I read that as Trump barely won, even though you only had 107 days and people don't like you very much. Because when you look at that loss, it's by like 1.5 points that Trump won.
On top of that, they started to have a halfway decent bit of traction with the whole, these guys are weirdos or creeps. What was it?
Weird, just weird.
It was just weird.
That was Tim Walz. Yeah, Tim Walz had that line.
And that lasted for like a week and a half, while it had no substance whatsoever in terms of some kind of a policy or something like that.
But it did speak to people's sentiment, though, because most of the country, Yeah, most of the
And
country
then
thinks it is weird to get obsessed about trans people in bathrooms. It is weird to get obsessed about trans students in sports. It is very weird to get obsessed about these things. All these
Jesus
culture
is
war
in the
issues.
clouds wringing his hands about what we're doing with our holes. Get the fuck out of here. It's
You know, it
creepy.
is it is very weird to get obsessed about that stuff. And I think that there's a whole crowd of basically, like halfway normal people that like deep down they know it's weird and they wish they would just stop talking about it so they can vote for them. But the
And
fact
the
that they keep talking
DNC,
about it, makes it hard for them to vote for those people because most people don't obsess over this stuff.
and then of course, as soon as the only thing that was making any kind of headway was starting to move forward, the fucking operatives inside of the party, the consultant class, shut that shit right the fuck down, and immediately they started going back into the negative.
So this next part gets to a point that I want to make about that I only had 107 days and it was, unprecedented. Had she had more time, maybe she could have sealed the deal. It's true, everyone now agrees, that President Joe Biden should never have run for re-election in the first place. See, just like the fucking genocide, everybody has always been against him running for re-election.
Yeah. All of the
But it's
people
also
I
true.
all of the people around Biden, all of his, not all, but a lot of his supporting staff it has come out. And in this book, apparently, you'll be very proud of me, Sean. I actually did not read this book.
Yeah,
I read
thank
about
God.
it. This time I didn't read it. But I did read about it. And apparently, the staff, while being shitty to Kamala, which, that's not great, the staff was just insulating Biden and enabling all of this bullshit the whole way along and making sure that this goes forward without a hitch. And that was a huge contributing factor to this fucking mess.
But it's also true that much of Harris's polling was at the campaign's outset and arguably began slipping once Americans had gotten to see more of the candidate. That's the point right there. It just gets buried in this small paragraph in the middle of this piece, when her best polling was in the very beginning. And basically, the more she got out in front of people, the more people got to know her, the less they liked her. And that's because there is nothing there. There is no substance. It's trying to grab a hold of vapor. She stands for absolutely nothing. She stands for like the default Democrat platform. That's what she stands for. And that's fine because for the most part, there's some good things in there. But even that wasn't enough. Her support for abortion rights, her support for I don't even know what else. It's basically abortion. That's what the platform comes down to, and that's the primary difference between these parties. Like, and obviously, had she gotten elected, it would have been much more business as usual. I mean, who knows what kind of things could have come up, but it would have been a lot of this sort of like I'm working really hard for you kind of stuff, but nothing really happens. As a result of any of that work. Haynes shifted the conversation to the epigraph of 107 Days. This is where it just gets fucking cringy. A quote from Kendrick Lamar's track Loyalty. You being a loyal person, being loyal perhaps to a fault to President Biden. Biden's name prompted boos from the audience. One of only a few instances of such a reaction. The others occurring during references to Trump and his administration. But if the audience was expecting Harris to denounce her former boss, she gave them no such satisfaction. This book is not about Joe Biden, Harris explained. This book is about those 107 days. Like, this book is about me.
It's about me.
But that like including part of like a line from Kendrick Lamar's song in there and like in the epigraph is just the worst. And then like invoking loyalty because that was her primary complaint, is that the voters were not loyal. They didn't show up for her. They didn't come out and vote for her, like these fucking like disloyal voters.
that is the fucking DNC entitlement that keeps not working. Like voters owe it to them.
By and large, this was an audience with little interest in relitigating the failures of the campaign, or for that matter, Democratic campaigns before it. The very mention of Hillary Clinton's name, for instance, drew no fewer than 2 separate rounds of applause. Clinton, Harris noted, had mentored her on the campaign trail. We all hope to be mentored, she reflected. We all hope to have support from those who came before, like from the loser who
Those
came
who
before
lost
me.
before. Yeah.
I spoke to 3 audience members after the event, and they all said they wouldn't hesitate to vote for Harris in 2028. I'm sure the whole room would vote for Harris in 2028, but this is a shrinking category. In the 2028 Democratic presidential primary, should she choose to run, of course she's going to run. There's too much ego on the table here for her to not run. She has to run. She has to run for the same reason Biden ran for re-election, even though he kept dumping ice cream on himself and getting lost in the woods. He had to run because his whole career was headed that direction. He couldn't not reach for the fucking ring there at the end. He had to be a 2-term president.
Listen, Jack, where's my horse?
I think this campaign in this book is more of an example of how you can win or how you can get close to winning. Don, a 31-year-old New Yorker, told me, how is this book about how you can win when she lost? This is one of the closest elections in this century, so it almost happened. Others considered it solely a matter of sexism and racism, and that's where the blame comes in. Is that, oh, they didn't want to vote for a woman candidate. Like, are you kidding me? Do you think
This
anybody
is the same
cares
fucking
about
line
that right
they
now?
pulled during Hillary. It's the
That, like,
same line.
nobody cares about that. Hillary was a shrew. Like, that's why nobody wanted to vote for her. It's not because she's a woman. Like that is
Because
not the
she,
reason.
because she, unlike Harris, will just blow with the wind. Hillary was all of the same awful policies of just keep the empire humming along with a nice click. Except she also was just as fucking Machiavellian as the DNC consultants, if not more so, and people could
Yeah.
smell it.
And I think that's probably why she did better, because of the behind work machinations of the whole political process. Her ability to strong arm people and to use that leverage when it was appropriate and find the points of leverage for that matter. I think she is much more savvy of an operator than Harris. And I don't think Harris has it in her to be that sort of that bloodthirsty, and in the way that Clinton just comes by naturally. Yeah, I don't think Harris has that, and I think that's why she didn't perform as well. She could have performed better, like just by the wheels of the political process. Like if she knew how, or had the ability to sniff it out in the way that Clinton has.
And in both cases, yeah, there was sexism and racism or at least in the case of Harris, there's racism
Of
going on.
course, there's
But that
some,
doesn't
but
mean
that
that's the primary driving force.
I don't even think it was it. I don't even think it factored in a noticeable way. I don't think that anybody. I don't think that there are like I think there's virtually nobody who showed up at the polling booth, or early voted or whatever, anybody who was filling out a ballot that thought like, I'm going to vote for Harris. I have a choice of Harris or Trump. I'm going to go with the white person. I don't think that
Well, so
factors into,
some of Trump's base.
well, but they were going to vote for
I know
Trump
what you mean.
anyway.
I know,
There's
I know.
nobody that where that was the determining factor. Where like I would vote for a Democrat, I'd even vote for a woman, but not a black woman. I just I don't buy it.
Not that we need to give too much credit to polls, but there weren't any polls where they were listing the top 10 motivating factors for voting for one or the other that they said, I don't know, I just can't have somebody who is a woman. That's going to be a real deal breaker for. Nobody said that. Fucking nobody. I mean, sure, there were slurs on Twitter, but that's not votes.
That's not votes, and those are people that were never going to vote for a Democrat, period, most likely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, it's not 1951. It is different. And like, yes, institutional racism is real, but not that kind of like, out in front, overt, kind, in your face on the street sort of stuff. It's not the same, like it just isn't. And those people are going to vote Republican anyway. You're not going to get like, those are not like part of this Democrat coalition of voters. You could say Harris is, I mean, please, somebody educate me if you know different. I mean, like, it's easy to talk and, especially when it's just the two of us on a show like this and assert things as a fact without, necessarily knowing it to be so. And if there's information out there, like, that I don't know about, and, and not just some anecdotal incident, because I know that those are true. But I'm talking about as a motivator when it comes to voting for a candidate. You could say Harris's questions were rhetorical ones and perhaps important, but they also betrayed what her critics have long argued is a certain hollowness to her political vision, still defined almost a year later by little more than her opposition to Trump, which was the campaign. I'm not that guy. Donald Trump campaigned by promising his supporters on day one he'd bring down prices, she explained, turning to the Democratic Party's perceived weaknesses on the economy. Here we are today, prices are up, inflation is up, and unemployment is up. He made those promises and he broke them. Harris's litany of unanswered questions also seemed to acknowledge, at least implicitly, that she'd misstepped in emphasizing the Trumpian threat to democracy as heavily as she had on the campaign trail. These institutions, Harris said, were not functioning as well as the Democrats had believed. I caution us, she said, against having any nostalgia. The Democratic Party of 2025 is in many ways not the party it was just a year ago. For one, Democratic voters are more willing to radically experiment. See, that's the thing. It is the same party it was a year ago. It's just been revealed. It has not fundamentally changed its constitution. We have the same members of the party. We have the same elected officials in the party. The only thing that's different is that it has been revealed. And this moment of the genocide in Gaza and the US's support of it has revealed exactly what we've been dealing with this entire time. And I think that's the fundamental switch, is not that the Democrats have changed from a year ago. It's that voters are seeing them differently than they did before because the light is different. And they're unabashed in their continued support for Israel. People like Chuck Schumer, getting out there and just refusing to budge on these topics tells you how bought and paid for they are.
We saw this also in 2016, where there was this real belief that there's hope of reform for the party until they squashed those dreams. They took a baseball bat to that ice skater immediately, and that that sort of raised hopes at being crushed was almost worse than not having much hope at all, or kind of a sort of a tepid in the background aspiration of some possibility of using the machinery of this party in a useful way. They made sure that you had no delusions about where this is going to be, and then they repeated the same thing with this campaign by saying, "You all better shape up.
You owe me your vote.
Get in line, or else."
Case in point, the only figure whose name seemed to generate as much excitement as Harris herself was New York's Democratic nominee for mayor, Zoran Mamdani. 2 nights earlier on Rachel Maddow, Harris had rather tepidly backed the 33-year-old Democratic socialist who has yet to be endorsed by key members of the party establishment. Quote, he's the Democratic nominee and he should be supported. That was Harris's endorsement. I mean, just what a coward she is.
It's the same response she gave when she was asked during the campaign about trans rights. She said, "We're going to follow the law." What kind of answer is that? So if the law is that we're just going to
right,
also,
exactly.
you're part of
if
setting
the law
the
is
law.
stoning, if the law is to stone adulterers, we're going to follow that law too. I mean, come on. Like, have a position. Disagree with the fucking law. How about that?
Yeah.
You know?
You're gonna have you would have had veto power, and you would have also effectively set the agenda while Congress is passing the laws. It is the presidency that
This
sets
is
the
somebody who
tone
does
of
it.
the party.
She doesn't. You can see in a statement like that, when she talked about we're going to follow the law in regards to trans rights, that she fundamentally doesn't understand the modern office of the president anyway. Because the president's role is clearly, as we've seen in recent history, all the way back to George W., is to just write executive orders one after another. And to like put things, basically create convention for things that are not explicitly illegal, and so that a law in support of that thing or protecting that thing, enshrining it, can get passed in the near future. That's been the modern role of the president. But now Harris appeared more assured. That's because this is all about an event in New York City. And this is where, she does have some political acumen. There's a mayor's race coming up in New York, she said, drawing rapturous cheer from the hometown crowd. I have endorsed Mamdani. The applause swelled. The enthusiasm, right? She added, smiling. Haynes asked whether Harris would return to New York to campaign for Mamdani. Maybe, Harris replied. I mean, come on. It's like, and this is where like her allegiance is to the party and not to any kind of a vision. Like she feels no responsibility to improve conditions for people, offer them any kind of material support, nothing like that. She feels
Hakeem
no
Jeffries said the same
responsibility.
fucking shit. He's I don't know why I'm doing Barack Obama for him. Uh,
Yeah, he doesn't even
I,
he has
he's
none of that
he's
charisma.
like, how do you make somebody sound really bland? Just okay. Just imagine I'm speaking with oatmeal, and then you got it, and he
Right.
basically just
You're
all
alternating taking spoonfuls of oatmeal and mayonnaise.
yeah. There you go. Perfect. And then all he effectively said was, well, if he's the party's nominee, I suppose he's the party's nominee. It's like fucking great, buddy.
He used to be a rapper.
Yes, I did know that. Well, Mamdani also did.
Yeah, but I think Mamdani was decent though. But Hakeem Jeffries,
Oh yeah.
like doing hip hop, oh my god, I would love to hear that. I would love it so much.
Oh, and in we could put on maybe a mix album. Was it Vivek Ramaswamy?
Yeah,
Didn't
that's right. He used to do hip hop too. All right, let me get back in here. More than when she spoke about politics, though, Harris appeared most at ease dispensing life advice as the event segued into a Q&A session. This part, too. The first audience question pulled from Haynes's pre-approved stack came from an audience member named Layla, who asked Harris for career guidance. As a woman in corporate America who aspires to lead, she began, what advice would you give me? Build influence before I have a formal leadership title and work effectively with people who clearly do not want me to succeed? Harris encouraged her to choose your safe circle of people who have a sense of what you're going through and are going to applaud your ambition.
This is that Family Guy episode where Stewie
Oh, hold
attends a
on. No, no, it
Comic-Con.
gets better. It gets better.
Okay.
Danielle, I know what you're talking about. Danielle, another audience member, turned to Harris for parenting advice. She was expecting her first child, a boy. I understand the huge responsibility I'm tasked in raising of this boy to have a good heart and a moral compass, which so many young men lack today, she said. I mean, really, give me the fucking evidence that young men lack a moral compass and a good heart today. What are you reading? What are you watching? What kind of media are you immersing yourself in where you think
Compared
that
to
there's
what?
just like it's a growing fucking epidemic of people that don't have a good heart or moral compass? Like, where is she getting this from? How do people have these fucking ideas and like manage to like go about their day without like just walking into fucking traffic? She said she wanted to quote, hear your thoughts and advice on raising him in this world in this current political climate. I want to, before I get to Harris's response, I want to point out she doesn't have any fucking children.
It's like
She
Oprah, who gives life advice all the fucking
all
time
the
about
time. Yeah. About
children
her
and
everything.
marriage,
Yeah. I mean,
relationships.
yeah, and you know what? They could never get Oprah to run, and that's what they're trying to make Harris into. Is the Oprah we wish we could have had. Like they're trying to position her that way as like somebody who like has this platform and all of this influence based on nothing. Based on nothing at all. Based
Yeah.
on an honorary mention in a campaign. So yes, there are two children involved, but they are her husband's children. And when she married her husband, the youngest of them was 15 years old, and the other one was 20. So
They had one foot off the merry-go-round.
She's been around for like the teenage years, but she didn't like raise a baby. I shouldn't give parenting advice either for the same reason.
Now, if you want to hear my opinions about how to raise children,
nobody does. Harris responded, "Don't give up on our young men. They're our young men, right?" Haynes, for her part, sought Harris's perspective on the nature of married life. "What did you learn about marriage running for president?" she asked. Harris advised, "Communicate, in a way that is hopefully without judgment."
That is the most meaningless statement.
I won't do his bit, but I absolutely love it every time that Doug Imhoff comes up on Chapo Trap House and Felix talks about how the Democratic Party found her a husband, and like it's an arranged. He presents it like this arranged marriage. They're like she needed to be married for this campaign, so they got her a husband. But like you were about to say, Jules, this is Stewie like talking, like going to the Star Trek convention, and he's there for the Q&A with the cast of the whole Star Trek crowd, and like they're all up there, and people start asking questions, and he's really excited, and he gets to the first question is, I think about like my sponges are always moldy, and like what should I do about that?
And Patrick Stewart tells him to wring them out.
Right after
a dry
you don't
sponge
want to
is a
leave
happy
you don't want to
sponge or
leave a wet
something.
sponge on the sink. and then like somebody asks Gates
Jonathan
McFadden.
Frakes.
Oh, was it Jonathan Frakes?
Well, I think Frakes was next. Frakes
okay.
about like relationship advice, I think. Or no, a dry skin. Yeah, dry skin.
Dry skin. And then somebody asked Gates McFadden about like the best place to like drill an artesian well. I mean, it was so good. Harris to this crowd was not only a politician, but a figure of almost mythic proportions, a paragon of success professionally and personally. And indeed, the specificity of Harris's life advice seemed to exceed the precision of her political advice. "You described 107 Days as a political nonfiction thriller," Haynes quipped, "but I think it could also be a self-help for women in the workplace book." I think it could also be a self-help for women in the workplace book. Oh, man. Israel's ongoing war in Gaza, which the Biden-Harris administration had aided with billions in arms sales and transfers to many Democrats' dismay, did not receive a mention during the event. Protesters interrupted an earlier talk that night, but the party's deep divisions could no longer be ignored after audience members emerged from the event to a crowd of pro-Palestinian demonstrators. "Harris, Harris, you can't hide," chanted the protesters, bearing Palestinian flags and signs noting the quantity of arms sales and transfers Biden had approved. "Your legacy is genocide." So she did this. Somebody interrupted one of those speeches, one of those talks at a different event, and started chanting in the crowd. This is somebody who had paid the price to sit inside,
which is like $200 or something.
And it was like $200. and started chanting the same thing. And he was escorted, but she just, he just kept going as he's getting escorted out. And and when he, the referring to the part about your legacy is genocide, she just sort of like quips, you want to talk about legacy, look at all the mass deportations Trump's doing right now. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. Because she's still, what about that guy? She refuses to be responsible for anything. She won't, like, it's always an excuse. When she was running for president, she said, I'm not the president. When she's like, now that she lost, I'm not the president still. I can't do anything. I don't have any power. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, listen to that messaging. Like, you want to you want to create this base of influence by starting off with like asserting you have no power whatsoever, but you should listen to me about all these other things. But I don't have any power. I can't do anything, but you should listen to me. And like, what kind of president is that going to be? I mean, and people continue to just be stupefied that she didn't win this election.
At every turn, there's no responsibility to be taken. By the way, that comment that she makes is in direct contradiction to the reality, which a lot of folks may not realize, not people who listen to this podcast, but in general, which is that it was the fucking Democrats who, for 12 of the last 20 years or so, have been ensuring that the structures are in place and fully funded for Trump to do exactly what he fucking did. Yeah, granted, he injected ICE with rabies and made sure that every one of the agents are frothing at the mouth and turned them. I mean, they were all ready, but turned them loose and made sure that the goal here was to be a bunch of fucking psychopaths in public view and to make a whole spectacle of it. Yeah, granted, that was the case. That was the case, but fuck, Obama and Biden had kids in cages just the same. They were funding DHS. They were instituting these structures. This whole fucking thing got kicked off with Clinton in 1996. That's when they started to criminalize immigration and turn it from a parking ticket into some kind of a moral offense.
And this is, this is that's the kind of thing that identifies her as just a cutout for the party. She is just the one that is in the spotlight right now, and that's why she's getting the attention she has gotten, and that's why she gets the criticism from people, like while she's doing it for the same reason. She didn't create any of these scenarios, but she is complicit in perpetuating them because she won't break with it. She's clearly in agreement with it, or at least tacit agreement, which might as well be the same thing practically speaking. And so she's the one that's up there and refusing to be held accountable for any of her views because they're not her views. I think that's where it comes from, that sort of indignation that she has when people call her out on her own platform, because she didn't design the platform. Somebody handed it to her. So she's just like, well, I don't have any power. And that's because she doesn't have any power at all, because she's been put there because she's a cutout. And she feels it. I think she feels it deep down that she's just the person that's sitting in the chair right now. She's
the fucking substitute teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
She was given the lesson plan for the day, and
she didn't write it. She didn't write the lesson plan. She didn't write the history book, but we're gonna fucking learn it. And
the old man called in sick.
Yeah. Yes,
the analogy continues.
Yeah. And that's where this sort of, I think that really is where this indignation comes from, because she doesn't have, she's never shown herself to be anybody that has any kind of a spine. She has no value. She's never spent time cultivating them. She doesn't know what she thinks about things. She doesn't know what she believes, what her deeply held, like values are. She has no idea. And she feels no responsibility to anybody that is out there in that audience either to be accountable for any of the things that she's endorsed, because she's never really endorsed them. She just sort of, she was like, in Tokyo when they when the trains are full, they have these guys that come out of these white gloves and come and like shove people in,
Yeah.
like they have sticks sometimes, they just shove them into the train. And that's basically what she is. She's the one getting shoved into the train. Like she's just like, she's the last one. She's the one by the door. So she's the one that you see.
Yep. And that's the only reason we know her at all. As I said at the top, is the only reason we know her is that she just got a consolation prize here.
It was a series of accidents. She has done nothing to merit her being in this position. I'm not going to disparage her law degree or the fact that she was a prosecutor, or she was attorney general of California too, wasn't she? I don't know. But
Uh, I think she's
the
just
fact that
prosecutor, but I might be
the fact
mistaken.
that she got, she was elected to the Senate multiple times, like none of that. Like, no, she did all those things. Absolutely. That is her record. She ran on things. She got elected to political office. She, presented herself decently as a senator during hearings. I don't know off the top of my head what her voting record looks like. I never really cared to look, but like those are all her accomplishments. She has them. Fine, go for it. But when it comes to the office of the president, she has never earned it. She's never
Yeah.
once earned it. Both, like, the last primary she was in, like you mentioned in the beginning, she left that race with single digits. Like she was never going to come anywhere close.
At
Like
her height,
the
she had maybe the teens for a
yeah,
couple of weeks of polling.
yeah, at her height, she maybe got into the teens, nowhere near what she was going to need to be able to pull off a presidential win. So the fact that she was there, it was just a series of accidents. The fact that she had that, ran in that last election was just a series of accidents. But this shows you that also that Trump is not the juggernaut that they presented him to be. He never was. He's never been that guy.
Yeah.
Because Harris almost still won against him. Even though she's terrible, and she's almost won. It was
The
really
thing that should
close.
be embarrassing, that you should crawl into a hole in shame regarding, is that she and Hillary lost to Trump,
Yeah.
the most idiotic, unelectable person. They lost to him, and they treat him as some kind of political genius, somebody who really gets it, and he speaks to the spirit of the people. And boy, isn't that depressing that the Democrats couldn't muster a good defense. No, you lost to a loser.
And along those lines, like one of the like a consistent thread here is that the Democrats have absolutely done everything they possibly can to never learn from any of this, to learn no lesson whatsoever. Like, and like that, one of the things that you and I had talked about before the show was the Ezra Klein interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates, and where he talks about, like Klein talks about him being this spectator, and where he doesn't, and all he wants to do, like his greatest aspiration, I think, if I remember right from that interview, is that he wants to to think about and refine his political ideas in a calm environment. And basically, like,
Yeah,
all the shit that Trump has gotten up to since he's been in office has been getting in the way of that. I'm like,
he's rephrasing the whole "I just want to have brunch again" bullshit.
yeah, exactly. I just want to, it's the same sentiment, even though it's a different take on it, of all the people who wanted Biden to be president because they didn't want to have to watch the news anymore.
Yeah,
Well, like they just wanted it quiet for a while.
well, on that in that same segment, there Coates is saying to him, "Listen, experience and the experience of those who have lived through the oppression in this country more intimately understand that you're gonna have the institutions and certain people and groups against you, and you're gonna fucking lose a lot. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's hopeless. It just means that that's gonna fucking happen." And he says, take a look at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was just saying, "Hey, let's have some peace," and he got shot. And then Ezra Klein responds to that by saying, "Hey, let me tell you about my favorite hot yoga mantra."
Right, he
What
starts
the
talking
fuck,
about
dude?
going. He starts go about talking about going to, like silent retreats, meditation retreats, and like this is. I think he's a perfect encapsulation of this complete lack of ability to listen and to learn from the people around them. There's people out there screaming about things, and you have these Democrats that they elected and otherwise. I mean, people in relative positions of power, like Ezra Klein as an editor for the Times, and with a huge following, and they refuse to acknowledge it. They want to sit inside there's a literal bubble, like, and like those environmental sort of like decompression chambers that Google used to have in their campus, where you can like go in there and you sit in this little cocoon and shut the door, and you can like tap away on your keyboard for a while, and it's all sound dampened. You can't hear anything going on outside. That's basically the world that Ezra Klein wants to live in, and the and for base and I think essentially that's what Harris wants too. Harris just wants to like run for president, and like, why do people keep asking me about what I think about things and what my policies are? Like you're just supposed to show up and vote for me. That's how this is supposed to work. I just want to be
She likes
president
being an
already.
administrator. That's her idea of a good time, and it's not really about having a belief and going somewhere with it. It's just about the activity of being in an office.
No,
That's the whole
they
fucking
should make
goal
her
here.
like the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Like that's
And
the perfect job.
this is really representative. I mean, Ezra Klein and everything that we've been talking about, specifically with this party run by consultants, this technocracy that they're trying to formulate of the party, is people who are wish casting, but they talk about these are the same consultants and speculators who talk about being pragmatic and being practical. We can't have any beliefs. You can't say anything of any substance because that might alienate somebody somewhere in the Midwest who's sitting on the fence about whether or not to vote for fascism. And that is so disconnected from reality, just as Ezra Klein is disconnected from reality. But it's also like they're fucking reading a crystal ball here, uh, but it's always wrong. So how are they going to say that they know what's best for everybody, and the plebes just really don't know what's going on here? Meanwhile, every bet they make is fucking wrong because they keep losing. These consultants are just fucking feng shui uh, interior decorators and pet psychics. They're bullshit artists.
In Deadwood, they form a government in the camp, the solely for the purpose of paying bribes. And at one point, they specifically say that somebody talks about, like, oughtn't we provide some services to the people of the camp, and with some of this money that we're levying, and the response was, well, we can provide some service to the camp after the bribes are paid.
Yeah. I
All right,
I think
I
we
think that's
probably
good for
gotta
this one.
put a pin in that.
Rant
Oh,
over.
actually, there is one thing I do want to leave us on an uplifting note. Yeah, they're not as left as I would like, but I think that there is some tiny bit of optimism in some pockets of the country because there are some pretty good candidates, relatively speaking, who are crushing it. We got Katie Wilson here in Seattle running for mayor. I'll say it every time. I wish she had any fucking charisma whatsoever, but hopefully, despite her lack of charisma, she can sail through on her policies. She already won the primary. So,
That's
same
a good
story with,
sign.
yeah. Same story with Zoran in New York City, Kat Abogazele in Illinois' running for the 9th district in Illinois. Tennessee State Rep Justin Pearson is running for Tennessee's 9th congressional district. And if you don't remember who that is, it's the guy who got kicked out by the Republicans with some quasi legal mechanisms of the state house, and then he got re-elected in a very affirming vote, and got sent right back in. So he's running for their 9th district as well. We got Saikat, I'm not going to butcher his name, Chuck Chakrabarty, running for Nancy Pelosi's seat in the 11th. And this guy who's recently come on my radar, who's actually kind of decent, and I like how he takes very clear, principled positions on fucking Gaza and on everything in between, and kitchen table shit, is Graham Plattner, and he's challenging the Republican Senator Susan Collins. And all of these look pretty good. They all have some decent chances of winning. So anyway,
there's definitely a moment happening right now where we are seeing some candidates get traction that previously wouldn't have. And I really do. I don't know that that would have been possible if there hadn't been a genocide in Gaza and people and we hadn't people other than me and Jules here didn't start seeing some of these entrenched, elected officials in this different light, in this new light as being unflinching supporters of this genocide, and making with the excuse making and all of the other things that revealed about, that this moment has revealed about them. I don't think that we would have these candidates getting the traction they have without that having had happened, without that happening. And it's there really is a chance, but this is definitely take a breath, but this is not the time to let up on the gas with this stuff. We need, and honestly, more candidates like this.
Even if every one of these tickets gets the win that I just mentioned, it's like the ceasefire. It doesn't mean that we get to celebrate per se. It just means we can breathe a little.
One last thing, a couple of last things before we go. As always, subscribe on Patreon to get access to our premium episodes. We just released one on Starship Troopers the other day, and that was a lot of fun to record. You can hear a sample of it on the regular public feed. We also have another couple of conversations coming up with some guests. I think one of those is going to land as a premium episode, maybe not. We'll see how it shakes out. We tend to alternate back and forth. Then the one last thing is that we have a merch drop. So go over to the link that's going to be in the show description and have a look at what we have to offer.
Yeah, and listen to our Banana Land series first and current episode. Go hunt it down.
Yeah, find it. All right, everybody. We'll see you out there.
Later, skaters.
Once you know what I mean, understand that. Once you understand that Martin Luther King could be standing up, telling his own people, we do not embrace violence at all. It is morally repugnant. We embrace love. And that could get you shot. Not burn it down. Love can get you shot. You just have a different view of your country. It is not, I emphasize this over and over again, it is not a fatalistic view. It is not, it is written in stone that we will ultimately lose, but you understand that losing is a possibility.
But so then what does there's a Buddhist meditation I like. This is a weird place to go. But it goes like this. I'm of the nature to grow sick. I'm of the nature to grow old. I'm of the nature to lose the people I love. I'm of the nature to die. How then shall I live? And
Love that.
yeah, I do it because sometimes you need the reminder.
Yeah.
What I hear you saying in a way is we are of the nature too.
Yeah.
And I think the place I'm trying to push is then how then shall we live? Because in this distinction you're making between like you would have been there correctly yelling at FDR. And I'm not like asking you, but like me, right? Like my work, my role.
Can you answer that? Can you say what you, I think it's a good point. Would you define for me how you see, like what your role is?
I don't know what my role is anymore. I'll be totally honest with you, man. I feel very conflicted about that question. The role I want to have is a person curiously exploring his political and intellectual interests in political peacetime. And the role I somehow have is sometimes that. But I am in the business. I'm a political opinion writer and podcaster and so on. And I'm in the business of political persuasion. And I feel like me and the people who believe what I believe, not narrowly speaking, but, you know, like the whole broad coalition, have failed in a really consequential way. And I think it is.
You feel like you failed in your work?
I think there are places I failed. I mean, I think there are things I got right too. Like I think we shouldn't have run Joe Biden again. I think I was right about that. I think I've gotten a lot right. But I think I've gotten definitely things wrong. But I think we are here now, right? That's what I would really say. And it is forcing me to rethink things I would prefer not to rethink. I will give you an example because people are mad at me on this one right now.
Please.
I said in a podcast with my colleague, Russ Dow, that he was pushing me on left radicalism. I was saying, I don't care about left-wing radicalism. I don't think it's some great threat. I don't think it's a huge political problem. I worry about left-wing pessimism, fatalism, that we are losing and don't want to change anything. And I said that the question for me is, how do we win Senate seats in places like Kansas and Missouri and Ohio? I said, I would like to see us doing things like in red states, and here I meant redder than those, running pro-life candidates. People got real upset about that, and I get why. But in 2010, when the Affordable Care Act passed, there were 40 House Democrats who were pro-life at some level. You had to do this whole negotiation with this guy, Bart Stupak.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And on the bright side, you don't have to have those negotiations now. And on the downside, you can't pass the Affordable Care Act. And the point is not that issue, right? That one issue, although things like, the example, say Susan Collins, where she's in theory pro-choice, but she votes for Mitch McConnell and John Thune as leader. Right. Like that's how you build power on some level, right? If you have those, Joe Manchin, like I wish he were still a senator from West Virginia, as much as I have deep disagreements with him.
That's good enough.
All right. I got to race out the door.
All right, cool.
Cool. That was good.
Yeah.